Hi, welcome back to technically the fourth year of this podcast. We started late 2022, went through all of 2023, 24, and now I'm super excited to be bringing you the podcast in 2025. It's such a cool way for me to connect with you, to connect with other experts, and to have, I hope, what are meaningful, real conversations in the field of, yeah, sure, spirituality, but hopefully empowerment. So today I just want to catch you up on what I've been up to, maybe like a revisit of 2024 and how I see 2025 playing out for us collectively and obviously individually as well. So 2024, what a ride. I don't know too many people that left that year thinking, oh my gosh, amazing. That was the best time of my life. If it was for you, like amazing. I'm really happy for you. But if I could sum up 2024, it just felt generally, not just personally, but generally like everyone was trudging through mud and none of us had the energy to do that. And we were just trying to get through the current circumstances that we found ourselves in. And I now can look back and think, wow, so much good came from that, but it didn't necessarily feel all that good whilst I was in it. But I will say, moving forward, I do see 2025 as a year that is going to be not necessarily less challenging, because I think that's what time does. It brings up challenges, and the challenges, of course, help us grow and expand and know ourselves more and all the things, but it feels definitely more productive and lighter because I think we had to have the real trudgy, sludgy year that was 2024 in order to really appreciate the impact that our own vibration and motivation, and as a result, action, has on our lives. And so there's this extra little oomph or spice I'm feeling within many of us where we're ready to move forward. We are ready to make stuff happen. And we no longer want to be weighed down by our circumstances or external goings on around us. That we can actually go deep within because we've built so much in 2024 without even knowing it to propel ourselves forward in 2025. I have a beautiful healer. Shout out to Phil. He's an amazing man. Hopefully I'll get him on for a chat on the podcast. He's a shaman that does really cool work. And we talked about this really early on in 2024, where he was like, the way he saw like my personal circumstance, but I'm sure many people will resonate with this. It was almost like the rocket ship, for want of a better word, had been built. And so much energy and time had gone into building structures in my life, both personally and professionally. And it was kind of like all ready to go. And I was feeling frustrated because it kind of hadn't shot off into the atmosphere. And I wasn't necessarily enjoying the journey or reaping the benefits from that takeoff and from sharing all the things and experiencing all the things. It was almost like I was still there shoveling in the fuel and it just wasn't igniting and taking off. But there is purpose in shoveling the fuel in the patience, and what was cultivated in that space. And I think that's more what I'll talk about on the podcast this year. I mean, you guys who have been listening to this podcast for quite some time know that one of my big passions is taking these big spiritual concepts, ideas, or language and really distilling them down to the practicality and kind of demystifying and in a way like unpolishing the idea of spirituality and evolving in order to make it not just really real and practical, but actually even more empowering than the shiny kind of lollipop versions of spiritual concepts and energetic concepts that are out there. So in 2024, I did spend just a lot of time grafting and not really, I felt, getting anywhere. But I made a big personal decision to spend a lot of time dedicated to healing my nervous system. And I feel for me that was probably a big missing piece of my puzzle in terms of my vitality, the way I approach life, and the way I process life. That I have done so much healing on myself through like the last 16 years since I started this journey. And lots of shadow work, lots of inner child work, lots of energy healing, lots of expansion, and all the things, and learning so much about others and myself. Like, I just have such a passion for it. And the reason why I'm so passionate for it is because I just find it interesting and so empowering. It's like you don't know what you don't know. And then when you know it, you can actually do something about it. And you come into a place of empowerment because then you have discernment and choice. So let's first say, for example, you find out that, you're anxiously attached in relationships. And so you can learn all the theory of that. Then you're so empowered because you have the choice of how to behave in relationships. You can choose to stay anxiously attached. You can choose to keep being attracted to avoidance and all the things and repeat the patterns and do everything. Or you can challenge yourself to choose differently. And choosing differently might require some healing around that, or getting used to the unfamiliar, and especially feeling safe in your nervous system, as an example. So that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, and whatever I do and speak to you about, that I've done it myself, or I've very much been along the journey with someone else who is doing the work as well. And so many of you are doing the work. And I've definitely noticed a shift in 2024 of the work that I have been doing with clients. I think in 2021, 22, there was a big uptake in people really wanting to know about the future. So they would come to someone like me in a reading scenario to really be reassured and guided, I guess, into a future that felt more exciting and expansive, and one that they had more control over. Big shift happened in 2024 when I believe we were all sitting in this, sludgy energy where lots of stuff was coming to the surface. And definitely the astrology moon cycles had a lot to do with that and a lot of impact on that. But the clients that were coming to me weren't necessarily as attached to the future outcomes as they were to their present day and how they could shift in order to influence their future outcomes. So it's people that really started to get it. It's not this pie in the sky, these things are destined to happen, therefore they will. It's like, if I want these things that are destined to happen, how can I best position myself to create and or receive them? And I loved working with people that way. And it's definitely, we're only a couple of weeks into 2025, but people, the conversations I'm having in readings, they're really this architecture of being able to look at self and then shift and adjust, sometimes even the tiniest things, and it's often the tiniest things, but bit by bit to become the architect of that future, to align with the destiny and the desires. So I'm pretty sure that the work is just going to continue to deepen that way. So as always, I definitely honor anyone who comes to sit for a reading or a healing, or the combination of both, to be nourished and held, but also challenged in that way. But let's flip back to 2024. So the biggest thing I dedicated my time to was healing my nervous system. And I think I'm going to do a whole other episode, if not a series of episodes on that. And I was really inspired by the work of Dana Doswell. I'm going to tag her in the show notes because you can go back and listen to her episode that I did last year. And I'll probably invite her back onto the podcast this year to keep the conversation going around nervous system, because honestly, it has changed everything for me. So really it was tapping into and trusting my physical body again, and integrating the emotional responses to my circumstances and how that would physically manifest in my body and what my reaction would be, and being able to nurture myself in order to shift it to a response or observation first and then a response. And yeah, the magical ways that it has shifted things has been remarkable and unexpected in a lot of ways. I don't think I went into the nervous system work really with a idea of an outcome in mind. And I think it's always important to have some idea, but not specific, because then you're open to all the magic that can come from healing, because everything's so interconnected. But I have to say, my relationships shifted. My self-perception has massively shifted. The way I care for myself has completely been rewired and transformed. The way in which I am so much more safe in my own being, and therefore the people that I have attracted into my life as a result of this are also so safe and so secure in their body. As we know, like attracts like. So any of the chaos or the helplessness vibes I was getting from people in my life, they've like just walked out, and it's amazing. And I'm so grateful for that kind of draining energy to have gone, so that there's all this space for these new relationships to come in with people who are self-contained and take responsibility for themselves. And when you're around people like that, you naturally up your game, you are naturally more honest, and you are naturally more vulnerable, because you know that it can be held in a way that it couldn't before around the helplessness or the chaos. So what my big lessons, I think I've got like 4 big lessons, and nothing groundbreaking, nothing super new, but I just quickly wanted to share them with you nonetheless. So the first thing is, because it was a hard year, and the reality was it was a hard year on many levels, I learned that, or I was reminded that resilience is built, it's not inherited. I always thought that I was just a pretty resilient person. And maybe I just thought maybe naturally that was my inclination. But I think I really learned that resilience isn't something I was born with. It's something that I grow through in those challenging moments and times in my life. And life is always going to throw us unexpected challenges. And we are going to be easily feeling overwhelmed or broken by these circumstances. But there's always the choice to expand into resilience, to choose to, stand up after you're being knocked down, to choose to stay in alignment with intention and purpose, to choose to move forward, even if you don't really know it's going to pay off, but you are in alignment with your integrity in terms of what you're doing in this world and how you choose to do it. And resilience is absolutely not about avoiding the discomfort or the pain that comes from the tough lessons or the tough times, but it's about learning to adapt your approach to strength and find even deeper strength in those moments of fear, uncertainty, and vulnerability. Because with every setback and challenge that we'll experience over our life, it's actually just a building block for the person that I continue to become. And I think the biggest reframe for me around resilience was that I'm not learning to be resilient so I can endure all the tough times. I'm actually learning to be resilient more and more as I grow, to actually thrive regardless of the circumstances that I'm in. And so building on from that, the second big lesson that I learned is persistence is the quietest strength that always wins the longest race. So persistence for me isn't about forcing something to happen, but it's about that gentle, quiet showing up again and again and again, even when the immediate rewards are not obvious. I had to do this when healing my nervous system, because it was like that long process of sticking to routine and implementing all the things I was doing, but not necessarily seeing massive changes or obvious changes in my life. And in fact, I remember the moment, I mean, I won't share it here, it's kind of personal, but I do remember the moment where all of a sudden it just dawned on me, oh my gosh, my nervous system has completely shifted. I was like 8 months into the journey. But the thing that I kept referring back to, I had a friend once who shared a meme with me, and she was like, I just ate a salad and now we wait to kind of get skinny. And it's like, yeah, it's not about the one salad. It's not about the one workout. It's not about the one healing. It's not about the one commitment to self. It's about the quiet consistency of showing up again and again for yourself. And so this taught me, or reminded me, that there are no shortcuts to progress. So the journey may feel slow and frustrating when you're so attached to the outcome and the immediacy of that outcome. But if you can know that the outcome is assured, so you don't even need to think about it, if you just keep showing up for yourself. And in fact, the outcome can be so much more wonderful and surprising and rewarding when it is that you do that. And so when we're persistent and we're quietly building that strength around persistence, eventually it's going to lead to transformation. Of course it is. And if you're someone that, knows what they want and you feel like you're being persistent, but you're being really frustrated with the process, I would question your attachment to that outcome, to that result that you're seeking. And maybe that attachment is way too strong, that if you need it in order to feel good, then it isn't really, the thing isn't the issue. It's maybe what you feel lacking within you. But again, that is a huge topic that, yeah, sure, we'll probably revisit. Let me know if you want me to talk more on that. The third lesson is a big reminder that you are responsible for yourself. I really appreciate our deep interconnectedness. I really do, and I honor that. But ultimately, we are only responsible for ourselves. And it's so easy to feel the weight of others' emotions and actions and expectations and even their own personal problems. It's so easy to feel sometimes the projection of other people needing you in a certain way. And I'm not talking about like little people or parenting. I'm talking about friends, relationships, and even like adult family members, that they can, really project this expectation on you being, doing, and saying what it is that they need you to do, be, and say in that moment to maybe calm their nervous system, maybe for them to feel safe and secure. But really, the only person we have control over is ourselves. And I realized that carrying the burden of other people's choices or trying to fix things or be there for people that just aren't ours to fix or moments to be there for. Responsibility really means being accountable for your own actions and growth and well-being, and not sacrificing your peace for the sake of others, or not projecting your chaos onto others in order to leech off their peace. And this takes a lot of boundary work within yourself and with others to create more room for your own personal accountability without feeling responsible for other people's choices and actions. And again, I think that this is not about not respecting the interconnectedness of others or that we have with others, of course. But it's also knowing that we are so much more and greater than we give ourselves credit for. But unless we're giving ourselves credit for that and taking responsibility for that, then we're going to keep showing up around people that maybe don't take credit for their own greatness or responsibility for their own greatness. So a massive purge of people in my life that don't take necessarily a lot of responsibility for themselves, or maybe just expected too much from me. Regardless of what I do for work, and I'm sitting here talking and sharing ideas with you, I'm still very human. I'm still going through all my things. I'm still immensely flawed and learning and have all my shadow and all my egoic imprints on every aspect of my life all day, every day, of course. Sure, I've cultivated this huge higher perspective, and I've worked a lot with energy and healing in order to have that seep into the egoic experience to balance it out. Absolutely. I've done that work. I've done that work. And so when people come along, maybe expecting so much of you, it's okay to say no. And that was a big one that I learned, or that is actually not okay. The last lesson, I think this is a big energetic lesson, and I think that it's one that is really hard to learn because we're not conditioned to learn it. But it is the most powerful one, is that when we allow flow, so much more can come in and the right things can leave. And this is all to do with detachment from outcome that I've just touched upon before. And this is all to do with really feeling safety and security within yourself. So that self-actualization, that really aligned, balanced nervous system, and the responsibility we take for ourselves, because I really experienced the power of surrender in 2024 because my external circumstances, a lot of them were not in my control, and they were definitely not what I expected. And things ended that I didn't expect, things began that I definitely didn't expect. And I think that when I learned to just let go, let it flow, I learned that what stayed and what came is so much better than what I could ever have imagined. And what left actually was perfect in order to create space for that. Like things that I walked out of 2024 with could not have existed at the start of 2024 when it was clogged with ideas, goals, people, expectations that I walked into 2024 with. So by letting that go, so much better could come in. And it seems magical, but it's not. It's just energetic. Because when we're holding on too tightly to people or opportunities or expectation, it only creates resistance and stress. And we know resistance and stress is not a place where abundance and joy and love wants to come and play and set up home. So if something or someone is meant for you, it will come. But we have to cultivate a beautiful environment for it to stay. But if it's not meant for you, it will go. And so trusting that ebb and flow, because I built this deep sense of safety and security and trust within myself via my nervous system, built on top of all the other work I've done for the last 16 years, it really allowed me to release the need to control and embrace the timing of this beautiful universe that together we're co-creating. And knowing that, yeah, I'm always where I need to be, and I'm always experiencing exactly what I need to experience, whether my ego decides they like it or not, or whether it was in the plan. Sometimes when you can just let go and be in the flow, then you're going to experience so much more than you could have ever planned or contorted or schemed for. So brings me to 2025. I mean, taking all this approach and all these lessons into 2025. Look, I generally feel the energy of this year is far more expansive, and it's far more action orientated in terms of our own personal choices and our own personal goals, ambitions, or intentions. Yes, there has to be that energy of flow and letting go of the outcome, absolutely, and responding to circumstances around us. But it definitely has this energy of like, oh, it's a little bit of go time. A lot of endings are expected to happen this year. It is a 9-year in numerology. So it's the end of the cycle. So a lot of endings will happen, but endings are really just a new beginning. So don't fear what is floating away, what is ending, what is coming to a conclusion, even if it's not something that you expected or desired. I would say just respect it and know that this ending is actually just a new beginning. It is 100% for me a big year of alignment. So I'm going to be focusing a lot on alignment in what I talk to you about, in what I'm teaching, and what I'm working on behind the scenes. Of course, I'm not going to tell you that until the timing is right. But the practice of alignment, I think, is just so vital in terms not just of the energetics of how this universe works, but also with our own personal integrity and the joy that we get from being who we truly are. The podcast, I think it will look pretty much the same as last year, although I will say I am going to respond to some of your feedback on the podcast in that you guys really liked the experts that I brought on or the guests that I had, but you could do with less of it. So I'm like, okay, I've spoken to the girls on the Light Path Collective, because as you know, this podcast is an extension of the Light Path Collective, where we are blessed with the best there. There will be changes this year. There will be new practitioners coming on, so I can't wait to introduce them to you when the time is right. But the resource, the knowledge, the inspiration, the empowerment, the truths, the lessons that these women hold are so deep. I actually want to have our practitioners on here far more than I do external guests. Now, that isn't to say I'm not going to have external guests on, and especially repeated guests that you guys really resonated with and loved, and that I really resonated and loved talking to. But I'm also not opposed to switching it up and, doing more solo episodes this year, which brings me to, if you want anything discussed on the podcast, I encourage you to reach out to me. You can reach out to me directly at info@thelightpathcollective.com. You can drop me a note on Instagram. I'll see it. And if it's appropriate and I'm up for talking about it, then I'll definitely drop it in. So keep your questions, your ideas, your topics coming, because this is not the Light Path podcast or my podcast. This is our podcast. So I want to talk about the stuff that you guys want to nut out with me. And I was speaking to Natalie, our money expert, a lot over the end of last year, and we would always joke and laugh and say, gosh, that conversation we just had, where we really nutted a situation out by seeing it energetically and on that human level. And we've come up with some really good ideas here. We should record our conversations. So hopefully we get the opportunity to do that more, so you can hear us work through things on a real-time basis and have just honest, raw conversations about how we take all these ideas of self-improvement and expansion and empowerment and distill it into our lives when we're faced with challenges and the things that we do. But as always, I would really just love to thank you for being here. If you could do me the biggest favor and subscribe to the podcast, drop a rating wherever you listen to it. It really, really helps the podcast get out there. Sharing episodes as we go along with people that you feel would really resonate with the content we're talking about or discussing is such a great way of getting out that intention that we always have with everything we do on the Light Path Collective, which is to be of service, to empower people, and to educate. So happy 2025. Thank you again for joining me on the podcast. And I can't wait for another year of deep, inspiring, maybe slightly funny. At times, we need to start recording our personal conversations. I think that's where the humor will come in. But chats, so that we can all just walk our path a little bit lighter.